When Stella Scott received that beautifully wrapped gift basket at Denver Memorial Hospital, she thought it was just another thoughtful gesture from her sister-in-law during her recovery. The elegant arrangement of gourmet chocolates, herbal teas, and imported lotions seemed perfect for someone recuperating from major surgery. But when Nurse Patricia Chen quietly pulled her aside and whispered, "You need to scan this first before you touch anything else," Stella had no idea she was about to uncover a web of lies that would expose her own family's darkest secret and put her life in immediate danger. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The morning started like any other Tuesday at Denver Memorial Hospital. Stella Scott had been recovering from her emergency appendectomy for 3 days, and the antiseptic smell of the medical wing had become oddly comforting. She was finally feeling strong enough to sit up without wincing, and her doctor had mentioned she might be discharged by Friday if everything continued healing properly. Around 10:30, a delivery person appeared at her door carrying an enormous wicker basket wrapped in cellophane and tied with a lavish burgundy bow. The card attached read, "Thinking of you during your recovery. Love, Rebecca." Stella smiled despite the dull ache in her abdomen. Her sister-in-law, Rebecca Martinez, had always been thoughtful, though their relationship had been strained since Stella's divorce from Rebecca's brother David 2 years earlier. "Someone's popular today," joked Nurse Patricia Chen, a petite woman in her 40s who had been taking care of Stella since her admission. Patricia had emigrated from Taiwan 15 years ago and worked her way up to becoming one of the most respected nurses on the surgical floor. She was known for her attention to detail and her uncanny ability to spot things others missed. Stella reached for the basket, eager to see what Rebecca had chosen. The arrangement looked expensive. There were Swiss chocolates, organic chamomile, tea, French lavender soap, and what appeared to be some kind of premium hand cream. But as her fingers touched the cellophane, Patricia's hand gently intercepted hers. "Actually, Mrs. Scott, would you mind if we scan this first?" Patricia's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper, and she glanced toward the hallway before closing the door. "It's probably nothing, but I noticed something when the delivery person dropped this off." Stella's eyebrows furrowed. "Scan it? What do you mean?" Patricia moved closer to the bed, her expression serious. "The man who delivered this wasn't from any of the usual flower shops or gift services we see here. He was asking very specific questions about your condition, your discharge date, and whether you'd been receiving any visitors. When I asked which company he worked for, he gave me 3 different answers." The warmth Stella had felt from Rebecca's gesture began to cool. "That's strange. But maybe he was just new at the job?" "Maybe." Patricia picked up the basket carefully, examining it without disturbing the wrapping. "But here's what really caught my attention. See this card? The handwriting looks printed, not handwritten. And look at the postmark on this shipping label underneath the bow." Stella leaned forward, ignoring the sharp pull in her incision. The small shipping label was partially hidden beneath a decorative ribbon, but she could make out a date from 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks? But I only had surgery 3 days ago. How could Rebecca have known I'd be in the hospital? Patricia nodded, grimly. "Exactly what I was thinking. And there's something else." She pointed to a small electronic device barely visible through the wicker weaving. "This looks like some kind of recording equipment, but I can't be sure without taking the whole thing apart." Stella's mouth went dry. The idea that Rebecca might be spying on her seemed impossible, but then again, the divorce had brought out sides of David's family that she'd never seen before. The custody battle over their daughter Emma had been particularly vicious, with accusations and counter-accusations that had torn their social circle apart. "We need to be very careful about this," Patricia continued. "If there's surveillance equipment in here, whoever sent it might be monitoring our conversation right now. But more importantly, if someone went to this much trouble to plant something, In your hospital room, we need to figure out what they're really after. Stella thought about the past few months. Since the divorce was finalized, she'd been rebuilding her life as a freelance graphic designer. She'd moved into a small apartment across town, started therapy, and was slowly regaining her confidence. The appendectomy had been completely unexpected. She'd doubled over with pain during Emma's soccer game last Saturday and ended up in emergency surgery that same night. Patricia, can I ask you something? Stella kept her voice low. When I was admitted, who exactly did you contact about my condition? I mean, besides my emergency contact? We only called the number you provided. Your sister-in-law, Rebecca, since she was listed as your emergency contact and you said she was watching your daughter. Patricia paused, a realization dawning on her face. But wait, someone else called the nurses' station yesterday asking about your condition, a man claiming to be your brother-in-law. When I told him we could only discuss information with your listed emergency contact, he got very agitated. David. Stella felt a chill run down her spine. Her ex-husband had been trying to gain full custody of Emma, claiming that Stella was financially unstable and emotionally unfit to be a parent. The appendectomy had forced her to miss several important meetings with her lawyer, and she'd had to ask Rebecca to take care of Emma for the week. Patricia moved to her computer terminal and began typing quickly. I'm going to run a security scan on this basket using our equipment downstairs. But first, I think you should see something. She pulled up Stella's medical records on the screen and scrolled down to the admission notes. These records show that you've been in and out of the hospital 6 times in the past year for various mental health crises. They list multiple psychiatric medications and indicate a history of self-harm. Stella stared at the screen in disbelief. That's completely false. I've never been hospitalized for mental health issues. I've never taken psychiatric medications except for a mild antidepressant during the divorce, and I've certainly never hurt myself. I know, Patricia said quietly. I've been taking care of you for 3 days, and none of this matches your behavior or your actual medical history from your primary care doctor. Someone has altered your records, and they've done it very professionally. These changes were made to look like they came from legitimate medical sources. The room seemed to spin slightly as the implications hit Stella. If her medical records showed a history of mental instability, it would destroy her chances in the custody battle. David's lawyer would use this evidence to argue that she was unfit to care for Emma. But how could someone forge hospital records and get them entered into the official system? There's more, Patricia continued, scrolling through additional screens. According to these records, you've been treated by Dr. Harrison Westfield for severe bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. But I've worked at this hospital for 8 years, and we've never had a psychiatrist named Harrison Westfield on staff. Stella grabbed Patricia's arm. Rebecca works in medical administration at St. Catherine's Hospital across town. She has access to medical record systems, and she's been pushing hard for David to get full custody, saying it would be better for Emma to have stability. That would explain how someone got access to make these changes look legitimate, Patricia said. But we need proof before we can do anything about it. And we need to be very careful. If she's gone to this much trouble to frame you as mentally unstable, she's not going to stop here. The gift basket sat on the bedside table like a beautiful time bomb, its burgundy bow mocking them both. Stella realized that what she'd thought was a thoughtful recovery gift might actually be the final piece in a carefully constructed trap designed to destroy her relationship with her daughter forever. Patricia stood up and moved toward the door. I'm going to take this basket to security and have them scan it properly. While I'm gone, don't mention any of this to anyone who comes in your room. And Stella? She turned back with a serious expression. When you call your lawyer about the forged records, make sure you don't use the hospital phone. The 47 minutes Patricia was gone felt like hours. Stella stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the tiny perforations to keep her mind from spiraling into panic. Every footstep in the hallway made her heart race, wondering if David or Rebecca might appear. in her doorway. She'd tried calling her lawyer, Marcus Thompson, 3 times from her cell phone, but it kept going straight to voicemail. When Patricia finally returned, her face was grim. She carried a manila folder and closed the door behind her with deliberate care. The security scan found 2 devices, Patricia said without preamble. A voice recorder built into the bottom of the basket, and a small GPS tracker hidden inside one of the chocolate boxes. But that's not the worst part. Stella's stomach dropped. What else? I ran the serial numbers through our database. Both devices were purchased using a credit card registered to Westfield Medical Consulting, that fake doctor from your forged records. Someone created an entire fictional medical practice to make these fraudulent entries look legitimate. Patricia opened the folder and spread several documents across Stella's bed table. While security was scanning the basket, I did some digging in our system. These forged records weren't just added randomly. They were strategically placed to coincide with specific dates when you were supposedly too unstable to care for Emma. Stella examined the papers. Each falsified hospital visit corresponded to a weekend when David was supposed to have visitation with Emma. According to the fake records, she'd been admitted for psychiatric emergencies on October 15th, November 22nd, and December 18th. All Fridays when Emma was scheduled to spend the weekend with her father. I remember those dates, Stella said slowly. Emma came down with the flu in October, so David couldn't take her. In November, he canceled at the last minute because he had some work emergency. And in December, Emma had a birthday party she didn't want to miss. So every time David's weekend visit got canceled for legitimate reasons, someone created a fake hospital record showing you were having a mental health crisis, Patricia concluded. When this goes to court, it'll look like you were deliberately keeping Emma away from her father during your psychiatric episodes. A new voice cut through their conversation. Mrs. Scott, I'm Dr. Angela Reeves from psychiatry. I understand you've been having some difficulties managing your stress levels during recovery. Neither Stella nor Patricia had heard the door open. Dr. Reeves was a tall woman in her 50s with perfectly styled gray hair and an expensive-looking suit beneath her white coat. She carried an iPad and wore an expression of professional concern that seemed somehow rehearsed. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I'm sorry, but I didn't request a psychiatric consultation, Stella said carefully, remembering Patricia's warning about being cautious with hospital staff. Oh, it's standard protocol for patients with your history. Dr. Reeves consulted her iPad. I see here that you've been struggling with bipolar disorder and have had multiple hospitalizations for self-harm behaviors. Your sister-in-law called this morning expressing concern about your current mental state. Patricia stepped forward. Dr. Reeves, I'm not familiar with you. Which psychiatric department are you with? I'm consulting from St. Catherine's Hospital, Dr. Reeves replied smoothly. We have a reciprocal arrangement with Denver Memorial for complex cases. Mrs. Scott, I'd like to discuss adjusting your medication regimen to help with the anxiety you've been experiencing. Stella felt trapped. If she protested too strongly about not needing psychiatric medication, it might be recorded as evidence of her being uncooperative with treatment. But if she agreed to medication she didn't need, it would validate the false medical history someone had created for her. I think there's been some confusion with my records, Stella said diplomatically. I'm not currently taking any psychiatric medications, and I haven't been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Dr. Reeves frowned and tapped her iPad several times. That's very concerning, Mrs. Scott. Medication non-compliance is often a sign of deteriorating mental health. Patricia, has the patient shown any signs of agitation or paranoid thinking? Mrs. Scott has been completely lucid and appropriate throughout her stay, Patricia said firmly. Her behavior has been consistent with someone recovering normally. From appendix surgery. I see. Dr. Reeves made notes on her iPad. Well, I think we need to run some cognitive assessments before discharge. Mrs. Scott, I'm going to recommend a 72-hour psychiatric hold to ensure you're stable enough to care for your daughter. The words hit Stella like a physical blow. A psychiatric hold would keep her in the hospital against her will, give David emergency custody of Emma, and provide concrete evidence for his custody case that she was mentally unfit as a parent. "Dr. Reeves," Patricia interjected, "what's your medical license number? I need to document any psychiatric recommendations in Mrs. Scott's chart." For the first time, Dr. Reeves hesitated. My license information should be in the system. Already. You can look it up later." "Actually, I prefer to verify credentials immediately when dealing with psychiatric holds," Patricia said, moving to her computer terminal. "Let me just check the Colorado Medical Board database." Dr. Reeves's composure cracked slightly. "That won't be necessary. I need to check on another patient. We'll continue this conversation later, Mrs. Scott." She left the room quickly, her heels clicking rapidly down the hallway. Patricia's fingers flew across the keyboard. There's no Dr. Angela Reeves licensed in psychiatry in Colorado. In fact, there's no record of any Dr. Angela Reeves at St. Catherine's Hospital. Stella felt like she was living in a nightmare where up was down and nothing could be trusted. How many fake people are involved in this conspiracy? More than we initially thought. Patricia pulled up another screen. "I ran a search on Westfield Medical Consulting, the company that purchased the surveillance equipment. The business address is a mailbox service, but the phone number traces back to a law office. Brennan, Hutchins, and Associates." The name hit. Stella like ice water. "That's David's attorney's firm. Michael Brennan is representing him in the custody case." Patricia stared at the screen. "So your ex-husband's lawyer created a fake medical consulting company, hired someone to impersonate a psychiatrist, and conspired with your sister-in-law to forge your medical records and plant surveillance equipment in your hospital room." "But why go to such elaborate lengths?" Stella asked. "David could have just waited for the normal custody evaluation process." "Because he was losing," Patricia said grimly. "Think about it. You have stable housing, steady income as a freelancer, and Emma clearly wants to live with you. The only way he could win custody was to prove you're mentally incompetent. But since you're not actually mentally ill, they had to manufacture evidence." Stella's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Emma. "Mom, Dad says you're really sick and might not be able to take care of me anymore. Aunt Rebecca says I need to be brave. What's happening?" The manipulation was even deeper than Stella had realized. They weren't just trying to fool the court system. They were psychologically preparing Emma for the possibility that her mother might be declared unfit. "We need to move fast," Patricia said, reading the text over Stella's shoulder. "If they're already planting seeds with Emma, they're probably planning to file an emergency custody motion as soon as that fake psychiatrist reports her assessment." Stella's mind raced through possibilities. Can we prove the records were forged? The timestamps on the digital entries might tell us something, but we'd need a forensic computer analyst to trace the IP addresses and access logs. That takes time we don't have. What about the surveillance? Equipment? That's physical evidence of illegal activity. It is, but they could claim it was planted by someone else, or that you planted it yourself as part of a paranoid delusion. Without more evidence, it's your word against theirs. Patricia paused, then her expression changed. "Unless... Stella, do you still have access to any of David's personal accounts? Email, social media, anything he might have used to communicate with the lawyer or Rebecca about this plan?" "We shared a cloud storage account for Emma's photos in school. Documents. David never bothered to change the password after the divorce because he thought I'd forgotten about it. Can you access it from your phone?" Stella navigated to the shared account. Hundreds of photos and documents filled the screen, but Patricia guided her to look at recently modified files. Near the bottom of the list was a folder labeled Legal Strategy, with a modified date from just 2 days ago. Inside were email screenshots, payment receipts, and what appeared to be a step-by-step timeline for implementing their plan to frame Stella as mentally unstable. The evidence was all there. David's payments to the fake medical consulting company, Rebecca's access codes for the hospital record system, and even a detailed script for the fake Dr. Reeves to follow during her psychiatric evaluation. "This is it," Patricia breathed. "This is everything we need to prove the conspiracy." But as Stella scrolled through the documents, her blood ran cold at the final entry in their timeline. Phase 3. Hospitalization incident during Emma's school. Play Thursday evening. Emergency custody filing Friday morning. Emma's school play was tomorrow night. And according to their plan, Stella was supposed to have some kind of public breakdown that would justify an immediate psychiatric hold and emergency removal of Emma from her care. Stella's hands trembled as she screenshot every document in David's legal strategy folder. The plan was meticulous and cruel. They'd even researched which psychiatric medications would be hardest to refuse without appearing non-compliant, and had prepared fake witness statements from neighbors claiming to have seen her behaving erratically. "We need to get you out of here tonight," Patricia said, checking her watch. "If their timeline is accurate, they're probably planning to have you committed before Emma's play tomorrow so you can't attend. That would devastate her and make you look like an absent parent. But I'm not officially discharged until Friday. Won't leaving early make me look unstable? Not if your treating physician authorizes early discharge for medical reasons." Patricia smiled grimly. "Dr. Martinez owes me a favor, and he's been saying you're healing ahead of schedule anyway." While Patricia went to find Dr. Martinez, Stella called Marcus Thompson's office again. This time, his assistant Rachel picked up. "Marcus is in court, but I can patch you through to his cell if it's urgent," Rachel said. "Rachel, it's beyond urgent. David is trying to frame me as mentally ill using forged hospital records. I need Marcus to file an emergency motion to prevent him from getting custody of Emma." "Slow down, Stella. Forged hospital records? That's a serious criminal allegation." Stella quickly explained the surveillance equipment, fake psychiatrist, and the evidence in David's cloud storage. "Rachel, they're planning something at Emma's school play tomorrow night. I need legal protection before then. I'm conferencing Marcus right now." Marcus Thompson's voice crackled through the phone connection from the courthouse steps. "Stella, Rachel filled me in. This is much bigger than a custody dispute. We're talking about conspiracy, fraud, and practicing medicine without a license. But proving it in court is another matter. I have their entire plan documented in screenshots from David's own files. That evidence might not be admissible if you accessed his accounts without permission. Defense attorneys will claim you hacked his files or fabricated the documents." Stella felt the walls closing in. "So, what can we do?" "We need independent verification of the forged records and testimony from credible witnesses. This nurse who discovered the surveillance equipment, would she be willing to testify?" "Patricia? I think so." "Good. We also need to document the attempted psychiatric hold by the fake doctor. Did anyone else witness that conversation?" Stella thought back to Dr. Reeves's visit. "No, just Patricia and me. But Patricia verified that Dr. Reeves isn't licensed in Colorado. That helps. Here's what we're going to do. I'm filing an emergency protective order tonight to prevent any changes to Emma's custody status. But Stella, you need to be extremely careful. If they're desperate enough to commit multiple felonies, they might do something even more dangerous if they think they're about to be exposed." After hanging up, Stella realized she had no safe place to go. Her apartment lease was in her name, making it easy for David to find her. Rebecca knew all her friends and family members, and staying in the hospital made her a sitting duck for another fake psychiatric intervention. Patricia returned with discharge paperwork and a small duffel bag. "Dr. Martinez signed off on your early release for family emergency reasons. I brought you some street clothes from the hospital's emergency supply closet. And Stella, you can't go home. I know, but I don't know where else to go. My sister Jennifer runs a women's shelter downtown. It's not fancy, but it's secure, and they're used to dealing with situations involving custody disputes and domestic manipulation." Stella changed clothes quickly, wincing as the movement pulled at her surgical incision. The hospital gown had made her feel vulnerable. Regular clothes restored some sense of control, even though she knew her situation was far from normal. As they prepared to leave, Patricia's computer terminal chimed with an incoming message. Her face paled as she read it. What is it? Security alert. Someone tried to access your medical records from an external IP address 20 minutes ago. The system blocked it, but they attempted to add additional psychiatric diagnoses and medication, prescriptions. They're still trying to falsify my records even after we discovered their plan? It gets worse. The attempted access came from St. Catherine's Hospital, Rebecca's workplace. She's probably trying to create more evidence before tomorrow night. They left through the hospital's emergency exit to avoid the main lobby cameras. Patricia's car was parked in the employee garage, and she drove with the careful attention of someone who knew they might be followed. I've been thinking about their timeline, Patricia said as they wound through downtown Denver's evening traffic. Why did Emma's school play specifically? What makes that event so critical to their plan? Emma has the lead role in the school musical. She's been rehearsing for months. Everyone will be there. Teachers, other parents, even some local media. Because it's a charity fundraiser. Stella paused as the implication hit her. If I have a public breakdown at Emma's big moment, it would be witnessed by dozens of people who know our family. And it would be traumatic enough for Emma that she might actually want to live with her father instead of the mother who ruined her special night. The women's shelter was housed in a converted Victorian mansion in an older part of downtown. Jennifer Chen, Patricia's older sister, met them at the reinforced front door. She had the same intelligent eyes as Patricia, but carried herself with the weary confidence of someone who'd seen every possible variation of human cruelty. Patricia explained your situation, Jennifer said, leading them through a maze of security doors. We've had cases involving fabricated medical evidence before. Usually it's abusive partners trying to prove their victims are mentally unstable, but family custody disputes can be just as vicious. The room Jennifer showed Stella to was small but clean, with a narrow bed, desk, and window that had been reinforced with security film. The most important thing is that you're safe here while your lawyer sorts out the legal aspects. But I have to ask, are you prepared for the possibility that they might try to grab Emma directly? Stella's stomach lurched. What do you mean? If they realize their plan to have you declared mentally unfit isn't working, they might stage a kidnapping and claim Emma asked to be rescued from her unstable mother. It's more common than you'd think. Patricia pulled out her phone. We need to warn Emma's school. If David or Rebecca tries to pick her up early tomorrow, the staff should be alerted. But when Patricia called Roosevelt Elementary, the night janitor who answered had concerning news. Oh, you just missed them. Mr. Martinez and his sister picked up Emma about an hour ago for a family emergency, said her mother was having a medical crisis and they needed to get her somewhere safe. The room went silent except for the sound of Stella's heart pounding. David had Emma, and according to their documented timeline, he was probably telling her right now that her mother had suffered a complete mental breakdown and would never be able to care for her again. We have to call the police, Stella said. Jennifer shook her head. David is Emma's legal father with joint custody rights. Unless you have a court order preventing him from taking her, the police will treat this as a civil custody matter. But Marcus was filing an emergency protective order. That takes time to process and serve. Meanwhile, David can claim he was protecting Emma from your unstable behavior and that he had no knowledge of any court filing. Patricia was already pulling up news websites on her phone. Look at this. There's already a story posted on the Denver Tribune's website. Local mother hospitalized for mental health crisis, daughter safe with family. It was published 30 minutes ago. Stella read the brief article with growing horror. It described her as having a psychotic episode at Denver Memorial Hospital and quoted an unnamed source saying she'd been struggling with severe mental illness for months. The article mentioned that her daughter was safely in the care of relatives, pending a psychological evaluation. They're controlling the narrative, Jennifer observed. By tomorrow morning, everyone at Emma's school will believe you had a breakdown. When you show up at the play, they'll see it as confirmation that you're unstable and potentially dangerous. So if I go to Emma's play, I look crazy. If I don't go, I look like a neglectful mother who abandoned her daughter on her big night. Patricia stood up abruptly. There's something else we're missing. Why did they move up their timeline? According to David's documents, they weren't planning to take Emma until after the school play incident. Something made them accelerate the plan. Stella's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We know you found the files. Stop fighting this or Emma gets hurt. Some accidents can't be prevented." The message was unsigned, but the threat was crystal clear. David and Rebecca weren't just trying to win custody anymore. They were willing to threaten Emma's safety to force Stella's compliance. The threatening text message changed everything. Jennifer immediately activated the shelter's security protocols, locking down all entrances and notifying her network of contacts in law enforcement. But Stella couldn't just hide while Emma was in danger. "I need to see my daughter," Stella said, pacing the small room despite the pain in her abdomen. "Every minute she's with them, they're poisoning her mind against me." "And walking into their trap won't help Emma," Patricia countered. "They want you to act desperately. Every impulsive move you make feeds into their narrative that you're unstable." Jennifer was on the phone with someone, speaking in rapid, hushed tones. When she hung up, her expression was grim. "My contact at Child Protective Services says an emergency report was filed an hour ago, claiming you threatened to harm yourself and Emma. They're sending a caseworker to interview Emma tomorrow morning." "Who filed the report?" "Someone calling themselves Dr. Harrison Westfield, your fake psychiatrist. The report claims you called his office tonight making incoherent threats and that he's concerned for the child's immediate safety." Stella felt like she was drowning in quicksand. Every move she made seemed to sink her deeper. How can a fictional doctor file a real CPS report? "Because the person pretending to be Dr. Westfield probably has legitimate medical credentials under their real name," Patricia said. "They're using a real license to give credibility to fake medical opinions." Stella's phone rang. Marcus Thompson's name appeared on the screen. "Marcus, please tell me you have good news." "Mixed news. I got the emergency protective order filed, but David's attorney beat us to the courthouse. They filed an emergency custody modification claiming you're experiencing a psychiatric crisis and pose a danger to Emma. The judge granted temporary custody to David pending a full hearing Monday morning." "Monday? That's 4 days away." "I know. But here's the good news. I found something interesting in the court filings. David's attorney made a mistake. They referenced medical records from Denver General Hospital, but your surgery was at Denver Memorial. When I checked, there are no records of you ever being treated at Denver General." Stella's mind raced. So they created fake records at multiple hospitals? It looks that way. And that's sloppy. I've already sent investigators to both hospitals to document the discrepancies. If we can prove they fabricated records at multiple locations, it shows a systematic conspiracy, not just simple record-keeping errors. After the call ended, Patricia was staring at her laptop screen with a puzzled expression. "Stella, I've been digging deeper into the Westfield Medical Consulting Company. The business registration shows it was created 6 months ago, but look at this. The registered agent is someone named Thomas Brennan. Brennan, like David's lawyer Michael Brennan? Could be a relative. But here's what's really interesting. Thomas Brennan is listed as a licensed psychiatrist in Nevada, but his license was suspended 3 years ago for falsifying patient records." Jennifer looked up from her own computer. "I'm seeing news reports that might be connected. Dr. Thomas Brennan was involved in a scandal in Las Vegas where he helped wealthy parents manipulate custody cases by providing fake psychiatric evaluations. He disappeared before his criminal trial. The pieces were falling into place. David hadn't just hired a lawyer. He'd connected with a network of people who specialized in custody fraud. But understanding their system didn't solve Stella's immediate problem. Emma was still with them, and the school play was tomorrow night. "I have an idea," Patricia said suddenly. "What if we don't try to fight their plan? What if we use it against them?" "What do you mean?" "They're expecting you to either stay away from the play, which makes you look like a bad mother, or show up and have a breakdown, which proves you're unstable. But what if you show up completely calm and collected, with documentation proving their conspiracy?" Jennifer nodded slowly. "If Stella appears rational and presents evidence of the fraud in front of all those witnesses, it flips their script completely." "But they have Emma. They could coach her to reject me publicly or claim I've been abusing her." "Not if Emma doesn't." "Know what's really happening," Patricia said. "Think about it. Emma's 8 years old. She loves you. Unless they've told her something truly terrible, she's probably confused and scared, not turned against you." Stella's phone buzzed with a new message, this time from Emma's number. "Mommy, Daddy says you're too sick to come to my play. But I want you there. I practiced my solo just for you." The message felt like a lifeline. Emma wasn't rejecting her. She was being told things that didn't make sense to her. "We need to get word to Emma that you're okay," Jennifer said. "Is there someone at the school she trusts who could reassure her?" "Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez. Emma adores her, and Mrs. Rodriguez has always been supportive during the divorce." Patricia was already dialing. "What's the school's main number?" But when they reached Roosevelt Elementary, the news wasn't encouraging. The office staff had been instructed not to allow Stella any contact with Emma due to her medical situation. David had provided them with copies of the fake psychiatric records and the CPS report. "This is getting worse by the hour," Stella said. "By tomorrow night, everyone will believe I'm dangerously unstable." Jennifer stood up and grabbed her jacket. "Not everyone. I'm going to pay a visit to some people who know you well. Character. Witnesses can be more powerful than medical records, especially when those records are obviously fabricated." After Jennifer left, Patricia and Stella spent the next 2 hours building their case. They printed every screenshot from David's files, documented the timeline of events, and prepared a clear, factual presentation of the conspiracy. Patricia also reached out to her contacts at other hospitals to see if similar fake records had been created elsewhere. Around midnight, Patricia's phone rang. It was Dr. Martinez from Denver Memorial. "Patricia, we have a problem. Someone broke into the hospital tonight and tried to access the medical record system. Security caught them in the records department, but they claimed to be conducting an authorized audit for the state health department. Did you get an ID?" "Rebecca Martinez. When we called the state health department, they said they weren't conducting any audits and had never heard of Rebecca Martinez as an authorized representative." Stella felt a chill. She was trying to plant more fake records or destroy evidence of what she'd already done. "There's more," Dr. Martinez continued. "Security found several blank medical record forms in her bag, pre-signed with various doctors' names. She wasn't just altering your records, she was running a broader operation." After the call ended, Patricia shook her head in amazement. Rebecca got greedy. Instead of stopping after they got Emma, she went back to plant more evidence. That break-in attempt is going to be reported to police, and it directly connects her to the medical record fraud. But will that help us get Emma back tomorrow? It might. If we can show the judge that new evidence of criminal activity emerged after the emergency custody order was granted, we might get an expedited hearing. Stella's phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed David's number. "Stella, we need to talk." David's voice sounded strained, not at all like the confident manipulation she'd expected. "Where's Emma? Is she okay?" "She's fine, but she's asking a lot of questions I can't answer." "Look, this whole thing has gotten out of hand. Rebecca convinced me you were really unstable, but some of the stuff she's been doing, I didn't know about the fake doctors or the surveillance equipment." Stella exchanged glances with Patricia, who nodded and started recording the call. What are you saying, David? I'm saying maybe we can work something out. Emma wants to see you, and honestly, I'm starting to think Rebecca has her own agenda here. She's been pushing for things that don't make sense if this is really about Emma's welfare. Like what? Like insisting that you never get unsupervised visitation, even after you're treated for your supposed mental illness. And she's been talking about Emma needing to move to a different school district, away from all her friends. It's like she wants to erase you from Emma's life completely. For the first time in days, Stella felt a spark of hope. David might be manipulative, but he genuinely loved Emma. If he was starting to question Rebecca's motives, there might be a chance to resolve this without destroying their daughter in the process. The conversation with David lasted 20 minutes. And by the end, Stella had agreed to meet him at a neutral location, the coffee shop across from Emma's school, 2 hours before the play began. Patricia insisted on coming along, armed with all their evidence and a digital recorder. This could be a setup, Jennifer warned as they prepared to leave the shelter Friday evening. David might be genuinely having second thoughts, or Rebecca might have coached him to lure you into a public confrontation. I know, Stella replied, checking her reflection in the mirror. She'd chosen her clothes carefully, professional but not overdressed, put together but not trying too hard. But if there's even a chance David is starting to see through Rebecca's manipulation, I have to try. The coffee shop was busy with the usual pre-theater crowd grabbing caffeine before their children's performances. Stella spotted David at a corner table, looking older and more haggard than she'd ever seen him. When he saw her approach, his shoulders sagged with what looked like genuine relief. You look good, he said awkwardly. I mean, you look healthy. Rebecca kept saying you were falling apart, but I'm not, Stella finished, sitting down across from him. Patricia took a seat at the counter, close enough to intervene if needed, but far enough away to avoid seeming threatening. David rubbed his face with both hands. Stella, I need you to know that I never wanted it to go this far. When Rebecca first showed me those hospital records, I was genuinely worried about you. The divorce was ugly, and I thought maybe the stress had pushed you over the edge. What? Changed your mind? Emma. Last night she kept asking why you didn't come say goodnight to her before your emergency surgery. She said you always kiss her goodnight even when you're mad at me. And she was right. You would never go into surgery without making sure she knew you were okay. Stella felt tears threatening but forced them back. Where is she now? With Rebecca at her apartment, getting ready for tonight. But here's the thing that's really bothering me. Rebecca won't let Emma call you. She says it's because you're too unstable to talk to her. But Emma's been crying all morning. She doesn't understand why her mom won't even talk to her on the phone. Because I never got the messages, Stella said quietly. My phone shows dozens of blocked calls from your number and Emma's number. Rebecca probably told Emma I was rejecting her calls. David's face darkened. That manipulative, he caught himself and lowered his voice. Stella, there's something else. I found out Rebecca's been lying to both of us. She told me you'd been stalking her at work, showing up at the hospital making scenes. But when I called her supervisor to apologize for your behavior, they said they'd never heard of any incidents involving you. What else has she lied about? Remember when Emma got food poisoning back in October, and I had to cancel my weekend with her? Rebecca said you'd called her, gloating about how you'd deliberately given Emma something that would make her sick. But Emma told me yesterday that you were the one who stayed up all night taking care of her, and that you cried because you felt so bad about her being sick. Stella watched David's face as the full scope of Rebecca's manipulation became clear. To him, she's been playing us against each other. For months, maybe longer. David pulled out his phone. I started going through old text messages this morning. Every time you and I had a fight or misunderstanding, it was because Rebecca had told one of us something the other person supposedly said or did. She's been orchestrating our conflicts. But why? What does she gain from destroying our family? David hesitated, then leaned forward. I think she's in love with me, or obsessed with me. Last night, after we got Emma settled, she started talking about how we could be a real family together, how Emma would be better off with a stable mother figure like her instead of you. The pieces were clicking into place for Stella. Rebecca hadn't just been helping David win custody, she'd been eliminating Stella as competition for David's affection and for a maternal role in Emma's life. David, I need to tell you something about Rebecca that you're not going to want to hear. Stella pulled out her phone and showed him the screenshots from his cloud storage. She's been working with a criminal network to fabricate medical records. The doctor who filed the CPS report against me doesn't exist. The psychiatric evaluations in my file are complete fiction. David stared at the evidence, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally horror. She broke into your hospital room, she planted surveillance equipment, and she tried to break into the hospital record system again last night. She was caught red-handed with blank medical forms pre-signed with doctors' names. Jesus, Stella, I had no idea. I mean, I knew she worked in medical administration, but I thought that just meant she had access to verify information, not to create fake records. Patricia appeared at their table. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a problem. She showed them her phone, which displayed a local news app. The headline read, Custody dispute turns violent. Mother threatens father at public meeting. The article, posted just minutes earlier, described a confrontation between Stella and David at the coffee shop, claiming that Stella had made threats and appeared agitated and paranoid. It quoted an unnamed witness saying Stella seemed disconnected from reality and was rambling about conspiracy theories. They're watching us, Stella realized, scanning the coffee shop. Someone's been taking photos and reporting our conversation in real time. David's phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Saw the news report, bringing Emma home early. This is exactly the kind of behavior we were worried about. She's going to use this meeting as evidence that you're unstable, and I'm not keeping Emma safe from you, David said, standing up abruptly. I have to get to Emma before Rebecca convinces her that you're dangerous. But as they prepared to leave, 3 police officers entered the coffee shop. One of them approached their table with an official-looking document. Ms. Scott? We have a court order requiring you to undergo immediate psychiatric evaluation. You need to come with us. Patricia stepped forward. Officers, this woman is not exhibiting any signs of mental distress. What's the basis for this emergency evaluation? Multiple reports from concerned citizens about erratic behavior and threats made against family members. The judge signed the order 20 minutes ago. Stella felt the trap closing around her completely. Even her attempt to reconcile with David was being twisted into evidence of her instability. The fake news report had provided grounds for an emergency psychiatric hold, which would prevent her from attending Emma's play and give Rebecca everything she needed to destroy Stella's relationship with her daughter permanently. David looked stricken. Officers, I'm the father of her child, and I can tell you that Ms. Scott is not behaving erratically. She's been completely rational during our conversation. Sir, you're listed in the court documents as having concerns about her mental state. Are you changing your statement? David glanced at Stella, then at the officers, then at Patricia, who was frantically texting someone. Yes, I am. I was misled about Mrs. Scott's condition. I no longer believe she poses any danger to herself or our daughter. The lead officer looked confused. Sir, we have documentation that you filed a complaint about threatening behavior just this morning. I didn't file anything today, David said firmly. Someone else must have filed that complaint using my name. Patricia's phone rang, and she answered it immediately. Marcus? Thank God. We need emergency legal intervention right now. She quickly explained the situation while the officers waited, clearly unsure how to proceed when the supposed complainant was contradicting their paperwork. Officers, Patricia said after ending the call, Ms. Scott's attorney is filing an emergency motion to quash this psychiatric hold. He's also requesting an immediate investigation into fraudulent court filings. The person who filed the complaint using Mr. Martinez's name committed identity theft and perjury. The officers huddled together, speaking in low voices. Finally, the lead officer returned. We're going to hold off on the psychiatric evaluation pending clarification from the court. But Miss Scott, you need to remain in the immediate area until this gets sorted out. As the police left, David grabbed Stella's arm. We need to get Emma away from Rebecca right now. If she's desperate enough to commit identity theft and perjury, there's no telling what she might do next. But when they tried calling Rebecca's apartment, the phone went straight to voicemail. David's texts to Emma's phone were going undelivered. Rebecca and Emma had vanished, and the school play was starting in less than 2 hours. David's hands shook as he tried Rebecca's number for the 5th time in 10 minutes. Her phone is completely off, not even going to voicemail anymore. And look at this. He showed Stella his phone screen displaying Rebecca's social media. She posted a photo an hour ago of Emma getting ready for her big night, but there's no location tag, and I don't recognize the room they're in. Patricia was coordinating with Marcus Thompson while scanning traffic cameras through her laptop. Marcus says the police can't issue an Amber Alert because Rebecca is family and technically has permission to be with Emma. But he's got private investigators tracking her credit card usage and cell phone pings from before she turned it off. The last ping was near the interstate, Stella said, reading over Patricia's shoulder. She could be anywhere by now. But David was studying the social media photo more carefully. Wait! Look at this mirror behind Emma. I can see part of a sign reflection that says Mountain View, and there's what looks like old wallpaper with a specific pattern. Patricia enlarged the image on her laptop. Mountain View Motel. I know that place. It's about 20 minutes north of here, right off the highway. My sister Jennifer used to house domestic violence victims there when the shelter was full. That's where they are, Stella said with certainty. But why would Rebecca take Emma to a motel instead of just leaving town? David's face was grim. Because she's not planning to leave town. She's planning to bring Emma to the school play after all, but on her terms. Think about it. If Emma shows up without you, looking upset and clinging to Rebecca, it reinforces the narrative that you're an unfit mother and that Rebecca is the stable parental figure. The drive to Mountain View Motel took 18 minutes through Friday evening traffic. The old motor lodge sat on a hill overlooking the highway, its 1960s architecture and faded neon sign giving it a distinctly run-down appearance. David's car was parked outside room 237, and they could see light coming through the curtained window. I'm going in first, David said. Rebecca trusts me, and Emma needs to see that we're working together now. I'll be right behind you, Stella replied. Emma needs to know I came for her. Patricia stayed in the car with her phone ready to call for backup if needed. If this goes bad, I'm calling 911 immediately. David knocked on the door to room 237. Rebecca, it's me. We need to talk. The door opened after a long pause, revealing Rebecca in an elegant black dress that looked more appropriate for a formal dinner than a children's school play. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes had a wild, desperate quality that made Stella's skin crawl. David, I'm so glad you're here. Emma's been asking for you. Rebecca stepped aside to let him in, but her expression changed to fury when she saw Stella. What is she doing here? You said she was too unstable to be around Emma. Where's Emma? Stella asked, pushing past Rebecca into the room. Emma was sitting on the bed in her costume, a beautiful silver dress for her role as the fairy queen in the school musical. But instead of excitement, her face showed confusion and fear. When she saw Stella, she jumped up and ran toward her. Mommy, Aunt Rebecca said you were too sick to come to my play, but I knew you wouldn't miss it. I knew you'd come find me. Stella knelt down and pulled Emma into a careful hug, mindful of her healing incision. I would never miss your play, sweetheart. I'm sorry there was so much confusion. Rebecca's composure cracked completely. Emma, remember what we talked about? Your mother is very sick, and sometimes sick people say things that aren't true. You need to stay with me and Daddy where it's safe. But Mommy doesn't look sick, Emma said, studying Stella's face. She looks like she always does. David stepped between Rebecca and his family. Rebecca, this ends now. I know about the fake medical records, the surveillance equipment, the forged court documents. It's over. You don't understand, Rebecca said, her voice rising. I did this for you, for us. Stella was going to destroy Emma's life with her instability. I've seen it happen before. Children traumatized by mentally ill parents who should never have been allowed to keep custody. Except Stella isn't mentally ill, David said firmly. You fabricated everything, Rebecca laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Does it matter? Look at how well Emma's been doing with me taking care of her. Look at how much calmer you've been. Without Stella's drama and neediness. We could be a real family, David. Emma could have a stable mother figure who actually understands what's best for her. Emma looked back and forth between the adults, her 8-year-old mind trying to process the adult conflict swirling around her. I don't understand. Why is everyone fighting? I just want my mommy and daddy to come to my play. Stella's heart broke seeing Emma caught in the middle of this nightmare. Emma, honey, the adults are just working out some grown-up problems. But no matter what happens, Mommy and Daddy both love you very much. That's right, David added. And we're going to figure this out so everyone can come see you sing tonight. But Rebecca wasn't finished. David, you're making a terrible mistake. Once Stella gets Emma back, she'll poison her against you just like she tried to poison Emma against me. And when her real mental illness finally surfaces, Emma will be the one who suffers. There is no mental illness, Patricia's voice came from the doorway. She'd entered quietly while Rebecca was focused on David and Stella. But we have documented evidence of multiple felonies committed by you, including identity theft, perjury, breaking and entering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Rebecca spun around, her face contorting with rage. You have no idea what you're talking about. I'm a respected medical professional. I've dedicated my career to protecting children from unfit parents. You're a con artist who manipulated a good man's love for his daughter to serve your own obsession, Patricia replied calmly. And it's over. Police sirens could be heard approaching, in the distance. Marcus Thompson had been tracking their location through Patricia's phone and had called for backup when they'd entered the motel room. Rebecca's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. No, this isn't how it's supposed to end. Emma needs stability. She needs a real mother, not someone who abandons her for plastic surgery and creates drama everywhere she goes. I had emergency appendix surgery, Stella said quietly. And I never abandoned Emma. You prevented me from seeing her by lying to everyone about my mental state. You're still lying, Rebecca screamed. You're still manipulating everyone, making me look like the villain when I'm the only one who really cares about Emma's welfare. Emma started crying, overwhelmed by the adult emotions exploding around her. David immediately went to comfort her while Stella and Patricia positioned themselves between Rebecca and the door. Rebecca, David said, his voice gentle but firm. You need help. Real professional help. But Emma is not your daughter, and I'm not your husband. This fantasy you've built has to end. The police knocked on the door just as Rebecca collapsed into a chair, finally understanding that her elaborate plan had not only failed, but had exposed her to serious criminal charges. When the officers entered, they found a woman in an elegant black dress sobbing uncontrollably, while an 8-year-old girl in a fairy costume asked her parents if they could please go to her school play now because she didn't want to miss her. Solo. 25 minutes later, they were driving toward Roosevelt Elementary with a police escort. Emma sat between her parents in the back seat, chattering excitedly about the songs she'd been practicing and asking if they thought Grandma would be able to see the play from her seat in the auditorium. "Mommy," Emma said as they pulled into the school parking lot, "are you and Daddy friends again?" Stella and David exchanged glances over their daughter's head. "We're working on it, sweetheart," Stella said. "But no matter what, we both love you more than anything in the world." "Good," Emma said with the matter-of-fact wisdom of childhood. "Because I don't want to choose sides anymore. It's too hard and it makes my stomach hurt." As they walked into the school auditorium together, Stella realized that while Rebecca's conspiracy had nearly destroyed their family, it had also forced her and David to finally see past their own hurt and anger to focus on what really mattered: Emma's happiness and well-being. Sometimes the worst betrayals reveal the most important truths. 3 months later, Stella stood in the courthouse hallway, waiting for the final verdict in Rebecca Martinez's criminal trial. The woman who had once seemed like a caring sister-in-law now faced charges of conspiracy, identity theft, falsifying medical records, and practicing medicine without a license. The fake Dr. Thomas Brennan had been arrested in Arizona, where he'd been running a similar custody manipulation scheme under yet another assumed identity. Marcus Thompson emerged from the courtroom with a satisfied expression. Guilty on all counts. The judge was particularly harsh about the impact on Emma. Rebecca's looking at 5 to 7 years in federal prison. "What about the civil lawsuit?" Stella asked. The hospital settled out of court for Rebecca's unauthorized access to their systems, and Michael Brennan's law firm is facing serious sanctions from the State Bar Association. David's new attorney estimates you'll receive enough compensation to secure Emma's college fund and then some. David approached from the other end of the hallway, looking tired but relieved. Over the past 3 months, he'd undergone his own reckoning with how easily he'd been manipulated. He'd started therapy to understand why he'd been so willing to believe the worst about Stella and had worked hard to rebuild trust with his daughter.
"How did Emma do at school today?" Stella asked him. "Better. Mrs. Rodriguez says she's finally stopped asking if you're going to disappear again, and she's excited about the Mother's Day presentation next week." The Mother's Day school event had become a symbol of their family's healing. Emma had initially been terrified that the holiday would cause another custody battle, but this year she was looking forward to having both parents attend her class celebration. Patricia Chen appeared from around the corner, no longer wearing scrubs, but dressed in civilian clothes for her testimony as a key witness. The prosecutor said Rebecca showed no remorse during sentencing. She still claims she was protecting Emma from an unstable environment. "Some people can't accept reality even when it's proven in court," Stella observed, "but I'm grateful Emma won't have to testify. She's been through enough." The group walked outside into the spring sunshine. Denver Memorial Hospital was visible in the distance, where this entire nightmare had begun with what seemed like an innocent gift basket. Stella touched her abdomen unconsciously, where the appendix scar had healed completely, leaving only a thin white line as evidence of the surgery that had inadvertently exposed Rebecca's conspiracy. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't been so observant," Stella told Patricia. "If you'd just let me open that basket like any other gift." The recording device would have captured private conversations between you and Emma, probably including any complaints about David or Rebecca. "They would have edited those recordings to make you sound paranoid or vindictive," Patricia replied. "And the GPS tracker would have documented everywhere you went, looking for patterns they could characterize as erratic or concerning." David shook his head. "I still can't believe how elaborate the whole thing was. Creating fake medical practices, bribing clerks to enter false records, hiring actors to play doctors, it was like something out of a thriller movie." "Except it was targeting our 8-year-old daughter," Stella said. "Rebecca was willing to psychologically traumatize Emma to get what she wanted." Marcus gathered his briefings. "The important thing is that it's over. Emma's custody arrangement is finalized with joint physical custody, Rebecca is facing consequences for her crimes, and you two have figured out how to co-parent effectively." After the lawyers left, Stella and David walked toward their cars in the courthouse parking garage. Their relationship had evolved into something neither of them had expected. Not romantic reconciliation, but genuine friendship built on shared commitment to Emma's well-being. "I owe you an apology," David said suddenly. "Not just for believing Rebecca's lies, but for being the kind of person who was ready to believe them. I was so angry about the divorce that I wanted to think you were falling apart." "We both made mistakes during the divorce," Stella replied, "but Rebecca exploited our anger and hurt. She turned normal post-divorce tensions into weapons against our own family." David's phone buzzed with a text from Emma's after-school program. "Emma finished her art project early and wants to know if both parents can pick her up together today." They looked at each other and smiled. Emma had developed a new appreciation for seeing her parents cooperate, probably because she'd witnessed firsthand what happened when family members worked against each other instead of together. "Joint pickup duty?" David suggested. "Absolutely." Roosevelt Elementary looked exactly the same as it had the night of Emma's play, but everything felt different now. That evening, 3 months ago, they'd rushed in as a fractured family, held together by crisis. Today, they walked in as partners in parenting, ready to celebrate their daughter's small daily achievements. Emma ran toward them across the playground, her backpack bouncing and her face lit up with genuine happiness. "Mommy, Daddy, look what I made!" She thrust a colorful drawing toward them, depicting 3 figures labeled Mommy, Daddy, and Emma standing in front of a house under a rainbow. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Stella said, kneeling down to examine the artwork more closely. "Tell me about the rainbow." "Mrs. Rodriguez said rainbows come after storms, and that's what happened to our family. We had a really bad storm, but now we have rainbows again." David crouched down beside them. "That's very wise, Emma. And you know what? Rainbows are even more beautiful because of the storm that came before them." As they walked to their cars, Emma chattering about her upcoming Mother's Day presentation and asking if they could all go to the ice cream shop, Stella reflected on how close they'd come to losing everything. Rebecca's conspiracy had nearly succeeded not just Stella's relationship with Emma, but Emma's sense of security and trust in the family itself. "Mommy," Emma said as they reached the parking lot, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, honey." "Why did Aunt Rebecca want to hurt our family? I thought she loved us." It was the question Stella had been dreading and preparing for. Emma deserved honesty, but in an age-appropriate way that wouldn't traumatize her further. "Sometimes adults get confused about love," Stella said carefully. "Aunt Rebecca thought she was helping, but she was actually making things worse because she wasn't telling the truth. Real love means wanting what's best for someone else, even if it's not what you want for yourself. Like how you and Daddy don't live together anymore, but you still both love me?" Exactly like that. Emma considered this for a moment. "I'm glad the truth won, even when it was scary for a while." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." 6 months later, Stella received a letter forwarded through Marcus Thompson's office. It was from Rebecca, written from federal prison. The letter was filled with justifications and self-pity, claiming that Stella would eventually understand that Rebecca had been trying to protect Emma from inevitable disappointment and instability. Stella read it once, then threw it away without responding. Some people never learn that love isn't about control, and forgiveness doesn't require engaging with those who refuse to acknowledge the harm they've caused. What mattered was that Emma was thriving. She'd returned to her normal, cheerful, confident self, secure in the knowledge that both her parents loved her and were committed to her happiness. The conspiracy that had threatened to tear their family apart had ultimately made them stronger, teaching them all the difference between manipulation disguised as care and genuine love that puts the child's needs first. On Emma's 9th birthday, she made a wish before blowing out her candles. When asked what she'd wished for, she grinned and said, "I wished for our family to stay happy like this forever." Looking around the table at David, Patricia, who had become a cherished family friend, and even Marcus, who'd been invited as an honorary uncle, Stella realized that sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones rebuilt from the wreckage of betrayal, stronger because they've learned to value truth over comfort and love over control. The gift basket that had started it all was long gone, but the lesson it taught remained. The most dangerous threats to families often come wrapped in beautiful packages, presented by people who claim to care about you most. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.